Grace. It's both the essential theme of God's redemptive plan and the way that couples intentionally can alter their conflict patterns. It allows us as Christians to take the risk and to say, I'll go, I'll give a gift. Since the beginning, we have been stuck in a pain, defense, offense cycle that's really hard to get out of. Really though, Paul spoke about this and described stuckness with a different description when he said, we were dead in our trespasses and sin in Romans 3:23. Not to bring up the death thing again from the first meeting, but we were dead in our trespasses and sin. It's true in that. We are stuck in this, and we really don't have the capacity to fix it ourselves. So we come up with ways to protect ourselves. The two people in this picture that you're seeing are clothed differently. One is protected quite well from threat, and the other one, well, looks about as good as one of these presenters over here. So the people in the picture are well equipped to withstand a great deal of heat and feel no pain, like a firefighter. The other one just looks really good. So how we regularly dress ourselves really matters. I'm going to read Colossians 3:12 and 13. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. So this is what it says. It says, God chose us. He made us holy. He loved us. And therefore, in our response to his love for us, we dress ourselves in different garments than we might have before we were Christians or before we were following Christ. These garments should be all about beauty. They should have compassion, humility, kindness, goodness, gentleness, patience, right? Forgiveness. That is what we are to dress ourselves in. You know, I thought one of the things that would be really important to think about was that it talks about clothing ourselves in these things. And in ancient cultures, they would have seen clothing a little differently than we see, at least in my city, in a Western middle city in the United States. Here, I can go literally within 2 blocks of here and buy fast clothes for really cheap and just throw them on, wear them for a few months and throw them away. It's maybe not the most sustainable practice, but it's very common for us with our clothing. But we shouldn't be fooled by that, because the reality is all clothing requires a great deal of work. There are sheep to be grown and shorn. There's cotton to be grown and pulled. There's weaving to be done. There's synthetic fibers to be created with a chemistry lab. Then there's packaging and there's marketing and there's people selling them, all just so that I can put my clothes on. It actually is not a quick and easy endeavor at all.
Taking this metaphor of clothes, let's shift it into relationship between the space between, the us. And we can think about clothes as having 3 different components: purpose, peers, practice. The purpose we've talked about a great deal, a sense of our us and what our us is about, and how we strive to live for the other as he or she manages pain. Now we are going to engage in another type of clothing where we put on, and that will be the role of our peers, our relationships. And finally, we're going to engage in another activity called practice, rehearsal. So these new ways of living become just like second nature. Peers, practice, purpose becomes the clothes that we wear. When Paul admonishes us to put on a new set of clothes, he's really telling us, identify your purpose, engage in relationships, and rehearse these things together. Henri Duvernoy wrote a story from early in the previous century about a man named Tango. Tango and his friends were bad guys They were thieves, and they were burglaring a house. Tango was appointed to be the watch person outside as his partners went in and stole the valuables in the home on a street in London. They dressed Tango in the uniform of a London bobby. He stood with suit and hat and stick swinging in front of the house and would blow his whistle at the threat of any danger. During his role of the London bobby thief, a child came to him and needed to cross the street. Naturally, he helped the child, and the child expressed gratitude. An elderly couple looked for a neighborhood and asked him for directions, and he directed them to take the next street and turn left and go a couple of blocks to their destination. They thanked him again. Another London bobby was crossing on the other side of the street, and he tipped his hat and waved his baton at his colleague, Tango. Tango began to integrate this idea of, I am being respected. People like me. People look up to me. People need me. When his friends came out of the house carrying the bag of stolen goods, a wave of righteous indignation came over Tango. He blew his whistle and yelled, "Stop, thief! I arrest you in the name of the law." The clothes made the man. What Paul is telling us is clothe yourselves with compassion. Clothe yourselves with humility. Clothe yourself with gentleness. These are the things that are running contrary to the reactive responses that we give when we receive another person's defenses. Typically what happens is I clothe myself with reactivity. I clothe myself with anger and resentment, and I don't deserve this treatment. And I push back with the same kind of self-protectionism that is being sent to me. Mm-hmm. So I dress ugly, and I encourage then my spouse to dress ugly back. And we exchange this sense of we are prepared for ugliness in our fighting, in our look, in our demeanor, in our care for one another. Mm-hmm. Paul is saying, no, put on a different suit. And if you put on the suit of gentleness, you're going to engage and elicit more gentleness back if you put on a sense of humility and kindness.
Yeah, marriage changes when there is this purpose, peers, and practice. One of the ways we constructed this Grace Together workshop is that we would focus a good bit on the purpose. Why are we to clothe ourselves differently, right? To create an us, to have that thing we always long for in our relationship. How do we do it? Well, we created groups, right? And we wanted you to talk with each other as peers and to encourage each other in your relationship and to hear, like, we're not the only ones dealing with stress, and we're not the only ones who get caught in the pain, defense, offense cycle. And so you've begun a relationship with each other to help each other with your wardrobe, right? And to encourage each other. And then to practice, that we practice, we succeed, we fail some, and all will. Everyone gets caught in the pain, defense, offense cycle sometimes, and that limbic system just takes off like a train down the tracks, and it's very, very difficult to slow it down before it hits disaster. But you can live in the everyday with clothing. In fact, I give you a little challenge. My challenge to you is to consider, as you dress every day, to consider having a kind of prayer, Lord, help me to put on kindness, compassion, forgiveness, humility today, as part of a regular practice, and that might help.
The focus of peers is to develop this community. Other couples who get it, who know you, who know the process, will be far more effective at helping you than two psychologists and a book and a video and a workshop. Like, yeah, this is all fine, but in your small group, in the continuation of these ideas over time, that's where change happens. This just is kind of like a flash in the pan sort of experience. We learn to support one another in the formation of marital beauty in small group relationships that are sustaining.
we want to encourage you to practice and spend some time doing this. Perhaps you already have some people in your life like this, in a Sunday school class or a small group or friends and family, that really will encourage you in living and following Christ in your marriage by being forgiving and humble and good to each other. And so we want to encourage you to consider paying attention to that and building those peer relationships even more and building that practice. Building that practice, maybe a few minutes a day, just exercises to grow in grace together. It might be praying together. It might be reading a scripture together like Colossians 3. Nothing happens unless you have rehearsal and energy put into it. I played the piano as a child, and I had to practice every day, much to my brother's chagrin, until I got better by the time I was in high school, and you actually might want to listen to me. But it took years to get to that point. And I think we have to give each other some sense of grace about growing and everyone being on a growing journey in growing together and being more gracious and kind to each other. So it's going to take rehearsal, and this program offers you activities and a way to talk about it. In your groups, as you get together, maybe you might consider, even after this workshop is over, how you might want to kind of look at each other and say, want to go out to dinner, right? Do you want to just get together and talk about like, oh, this teacher at school is driving me crazy, right? And be able to encourage each other in your relationships and to be able to be more steady and participating and enjoying each other as a couple, but also as friends. We want you to reference back to Colossians and to think about this. Now, one of the things that can happen whenever people are starting to try to engage in kindness and things haven't maybe always been kind, or you kind of gotten stuck in a negative pattern and you're in that pain, defense, offense cycle, is you'll sometimes get people who kind of like, I want to be kind, but you go first, right? You know,
Yeah.
so, right? So I will be kind
I'll do
as
it
soon
when
as
you
you
do
are.
it first. Yeah.
You go first, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel the pain of what's been caused, and I feel like I shouldn't have to be the one to go first,
Right.
right?
I always go first. You go
I
first
always
now.
go first. I always go first. And it feels like, it really genuinely feels like I always go first.
Yeah.
And in reality, we just don't see so much, I think, what the other person does to try to repair the relationship and get it back into a Colossians 3, 12 through 13 kind of relationship.
Yeah. So here's the problem. Every couple in marriage, all of us, are stuck in this pain, defense, conflict cycle. Before we can practice peers and purpose, we've got to break out of the conflict pattern.
That's us. We're stuck. And I've felt stuck for years. It's not like things are that bad, so to speak. You know, Stanley, you're a great guy, and I know that you love me. But it always feels like there's something that we're missing. And it's just, we always just keep missing it, whatever it is. No matter what I do, it's just been missed.
I get it. I do it, and it affects me. You do it, and it affects you. It's like we're in a cycle, a spiral. Imani, I know you love me, but why is it so hard for us? And what do we do about it?
Pain, defense, offense can keep us stuck, and we can stay in this spot for 60 years of marriage, and then one of us will die. If Stanley is stuck, he's not going to try to do beautiful things. He's stuck. He still stings. If Imani is stuck, she's not going to do it either. Both of them are going to be justified in staying right in their stuckness, right in their defense, and look at the other person as though it's up to them to make it right first. And both of them, both of us in our respective marriages, and probably both of you, are going to be justified in staying right where we are. No one changes. We all wish we could change. We're frustrated that the other person doesn't change like he or she should. But I've tried, and they keep messing it up. That is the argument that keeps us right where we are, and then we die. This relational acid is allowed to stay in our marriage, and we just come to live with it as though, well, I tried. What else can we do? I married a jerk. and we somewhat live in that resentful bitterness forever.
Yeah. And this is where a sense of Christ's
Yeah.
forgiveness and grace and kindness and love
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
can help inspire. That when you're in that moment and it's time to repair it and it's time to return to Colossians 12 and 3, 12 and 13 kind of relationship,
Yeah.
I'll go first. Even if I go first a lot of the times. That is what it means to follow Christ. That's what it means to be a part of the family of God. And I'm glad to give the gift. You don't deserve it, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that you earned, but I want to give the gift.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to see, to be the first one to stop the cycle so we can get unstuck and we can have the marriage that we would want. We want to encourage, be the first.
Yeah. We know of grace as this big theological issue. It's like it's what God does for our salvation. We don't usually think about grace as a marriage issue, as a marriage task of I give to you out of my love for you and you give to me out of your love for me. And this thing is given freely as a gift. It's not this obligatory task. Because you have loved me, then I'll pay you back. Mm-hmm. It's not the exchange, it's the gift.
Grace. It's both the essential theme of God's redemptive plan and the way that couples intentionally can alter their conflict patterns. For all of us, for Stanley and Imani, for your relationship, for mine, for all of you, we all engage in marriage and we incur injuries. And that injury can make us defensive and make us hesitate to trust. It can even become a pattern. We reserve and withhold because we don't want to be vulnerable. And we kind of wish for the other to take the initial risk first, the no, you go kind of situation. But grace. Grace allows me, it allows us as Christians, as followers of Christ, as people who are being poured into by the love of Christ, to take the risk and to say, I'll go. I'll give a gift. I'll repair the relationship. Or on just a random Tuesday, I'll just do a kindness. I'll give compassion, right? I'll be a giving person. I will do good to you, and I will allow you to do good to me. I can give my partner grace. I can create space for me to receive grace. And then we can get out of that stuck pattern. And in fact, sometimes it's the things we do when we're not in the middle of the tornado and not in the middle of the speeding train and things are out of control that we build the relationship with kindness and compassion, with forgiveness and grace. That can really move the relationship into a place that's healthy and happy, and you have that us that you've always longed for. As we finish up, I want you to turn to your small groups, and in this discussion, you'll be discussing the gift of grace. And we hope you enjoy that discussion.